taking this. We're going to just change the order a little bit, and we're going to start off this evening with our equity director and a program update from Dr. Philip Woods. So take it away, Dr. Woods. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you for having me tonight. Just to give you an update of where we are for our plan to ensure equity for all. As we previously stated, we believe that diversity is one of the greatest strengths of our district. Collectively, we will continue to pursue an educational environment that's inclusive and supportive for all. This is just a little background on the journey of how we've got to this point. And then we see that the Achievement Gap Committee was formed in March of 2016. The Achievement Gap Committee meets regularly to inform the decision-making process. We looked at Cleveland, Stewart, and Evergreen as our pilot schools to start working with. But in working with the administration, we decided that we would work with all 4 elementary schools, and then we expanded that to the middle school and the high school. Appointing me as the equity coordinator, and then I've worked in the school, visiting multiple buildings, classrooms, meeting with the principals, meeting with the superintendents, et cetera. And then we've also established a working relationship with Pitt's community that works with equity and diversity across the districts. And we've had a positive relationship with working with them. They have come in and helped us with our diversity training, our making goals or progress towards our culturally responsive pedagogy. And then we recently had a recent training with the staff to talk about cultural competence. And then we're looking at examining our instructors as far as how they gauge themselves and they're aware of themselves so they can help and better service our students. Just looking at the timeline, we had Justin Brown come in and do some diversity awareness training, again, working with the University of Pittsburgh School of Education Center of Urban Education, working with our implicit bias training. And then as we stated in previous meetings, this work is ongoing. It's not just a flash fry, you meet once, talk about it. It has to be ongoing, and the district has committed to continuing that relationship and growing and working with our staff and our students. We've established a district equity team with representatives from each of the buildings, and then also, since the inception, we have done a district-wide support in the form of tutoring and instructional supports. So now, when I talk about the instructional support, in buildings where we're able to get tutoring, we have implemented tutoring. In the buildings where we could not get an established tutoring program, we've hired full-time substitutes to come in and work with our students who are in need or at risk. Again here, instructional walks, observations, walkthroughs. We had a meeting with the principals, and we had just an introduction at this point as far as the crosswalk between Charlotte Danielson and the cultural responsive pedagogy. At this point, I feel that we still need to continue the training in the cultural responsive pedagogy before we go forward with fully implementing and holding the teachers accountable for the crosswalk. Because the last thing we want to do is put something in place and it hasn't had the support so that we can equally hold the teachers and the staff accountable. This next slide, I had a slide in about the data as far as how the district's doing, but I looked online and I noticed that that was already done as far as the district is making progress as far as the building scores and data. So one of the things that I've discovered is that we recognize that there's a deficit. We recognize that some kids come to us less equipped than others. But what we have established is that when the students have been exposed to our curriculum, our training, our staff, that they're making progress. So just talking with Dr. Short and looking at some of the history, and being a principal in multiple other districts, we always get frustrated when we get our results, and then we're getting scores from students that are coming transient. We're getting students who are coming from schools with less rigor or less accountability than we have, and then the school has to be accountable for that. So working with Dr. Short, what we did was looked at a virtual cohort. And with the virtual cohort is you look at students who've been in our district from 2015, which was the first year of the Common Core test. We found that there was 42 African-American students who've been with us from the inception of the test, the new curriculum, And then we followed those students from 2015 to current. And then slide here, I just took apart, I'm sorry if you guys can't see it, the results of that virtual cohort. And the results show that the students increased their passing rate. And when I say passing, I'm talking about proficient and advanced. Increased their passing rate by 13.5%, from 57.2% to 70.7%. Now, I know the conversation is still out there as far as, okay, we're just looking at proficient, but let's also focus on advanced. The district, working with Dr. Short, Dr. Chakey, Dr. Rossi, have recognized that we are still deficient or lacking in the area of advance. But for the focus of this study, we're looking at passing. So the attention is still going to be paid to those students who are not achieving advance, and then we'll talk about how we plan to address that moving forward. But in the area of ELA, we have documentation, we have evidence, we have artifacts to show that students who have been in our school through the course of this time, who have received the education through our staff, who have been trained properly, who have been through the new curriculum, they're making progress. And the one thing I wanted to note is that in the ELA, in this cohort, in the year 2018, there was 0 African-American students who scored below basic who were part of this virtual cohort. So I just wanted to put that in there. Now, in math is an area that is a challenge for a lot of schools in the area. So again, in math, we have shown growth, not necessarily growth that we would want to boast about, but we have shown growth. And then in that case, we increased from 43.9% to 47.5%. And again, we recognize that this is an area of need, and then we're going to supply the resources and the supports and try to tackle and continue to make progress in this area. Again, I stated this before, the virtual cohort has proven that when the students are in this district uninterrupted, receiving the supports, receiving instruction from the training of the teachers who've been through the rigorous observations, walkthroughs, professional training, they are making they are making progress. And again, tenured staff members who have been trained in the differentiated instruction and the diversity training and the implicit bias, we hope that we can continue to make progress in that area. And then the last slide here is that Gateway School District is ranked within the top 5 schools in the state who have an enrollment of 15% or higher population of students who are African American. Now that was Dr. Short and I went on to the school index, and it's a public document. So if you could go on and you put the different criteria, and we looked at the statistics, and it's a fact. So you can't argue with data. Progress monitoring to ensure success, additional diversity awareness training. We just had an implicit bias training yesterday with the staff. There were several staff members that stayed behind and welcomed and was happy that we're having this training, we're having the conversations. I did recognize that we had a large group, and that's okay because we have to get the training, we have to get the information out there. But the conversations are more relevant when it's intimate amongst the group of staff who work together, because they're more likely to share. So we'll just make sure we plan accordingly and moving forward. We want to look at an equitable education delivery model, talking about our CRP, talking about looking at being more culturally responsive with the curriculum. And then again, as it was stated, access to honors and advanced placement courses for students who are minorities, et cetera, engaging communities and families. And I believe having these meetings, of course, making them public, being transparent, we're making progress in that goal. And then the most important thing I think that this district should receive credit for is that they have committed to identifying the challenges early. Because the earlier you supply the supports and make the supports during the school day, because we know our students and families have great responsibilities afterwards. I have students, and I'm sure in the district we have students who leave school and go home and take the role as a parent or caregiver. So the more support that we can give these students during the day, the more likely we are to continue to make progress and continue to chip away at that achievement gap. Again, we're looking at the equity treatment of students. I shared documents with the administration as far as the discipline referrals, which discipline referral is we're receiving the most referrals and et cetera. So we'll continue to work with the administration and work through that. I'm going to work with the Q and develop a qualitative study so that we can get information from the students, from the parents, from the staff on how we could continue to make progress in this work, increase our tutoring initiatives, and then again, go district-wide with the equity plan. So I believe that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Woods.
Thank you for that. Does anybody want
Anybody
to add
ask a
anything,
question?
Dr. Shaky or
No,
Dr. Short, or?
clearly since the inception of the achievement gap, probably almost 3.5 years ago, with former school board director Steve O'Donnell, at the onset, we determined that we wanted to look at a cohort of kids and follow them through. And I think we've been able to do that, but we've also identified that there are many other areas that we need to grow accordingly. And we will continue to do so in both ELA, math, and science as we continue to move forward. But it's important to understand that the onset of the new PA Core, Common Core assessment in 2015, and we had a shift to new curriculum materials in ELA and math. And of course, with all the pedagogy and instructional strategies from the assistant superintendents and Dr. Woods. The information that Dr. Woods delivered tonight is quite interesting. And I think it shows that once we're able to capture these kids and we understand that there are variances and a number of different factors that come into play, and students are migrant today and they move around. But as soon as we get them, we take a pulse on those kids. We want to understand where they're at diagnostically, and we assess them. No different than whenever you go to a doctor's office. Blood pressure, weight, checked. Mr. Beist, wasn't that correct?
I wasn't really listening. When you said wait, my ears were
And then, of course, that physician tells you, or told me, all right, cut out the cheeses, the meats, the whatever, lower the blood pressure, and then come back and see me in 9 weeks. That's essentially what we do with our students. We're telling them these are their weaknesses. We've delivered upon additional time for instructional purposes within the classroom, and the effects of that are showing. So thank you, Dr. Woods.
Dr. Woods, I have a question, I guess a comment and a question. The program that you're implementing here is internal, and then we have outside that all the parents and the other members of the community. So you're able to measure whether progress has been made here, what works, what doesn't work, what needs to be strengthened, et cetera. So you're getting some internal feedback using your internal measurements. What about the rest of the community? This is a hard question. Have you been getting feedback from some of the parents or other members of the community saying, attaboy, good job, or here's some suggestions, or can you do this differently, or have you seen such and such a study, or what? In other words, I don't know how you could get such feedback except by knocking on doors. That can't be done. But maybe the board has gotten some feedback that we could offer you, because maybe our ears are closer to the ground with respect to what's going on in the community. I don't know. But have you gotten any feedback?
I actually have gotten some feedback, and we talk about transparency and being honest. A lot of people don't understand how I can work down the hill and still come up here and meet the goal. So I will have to do a better job of being more vocal and more visible within this community. But I am in contact with stakeholders, I am in contact with staff members, and I get information, I get feedback. But if the board is shared, if information is shared with the board or administration, if you want to pass along on how I can help improve or help work with the district, I'd be more than happy to entertain anything.
See, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find a way to showcase what you're doing here, and maybe we're not doing a good enough job of it. Maybe people don't have a vehicle to do that, like the Facebook or the YouTube or other ways, the local cable access station. But how can we help promote what you're doing here and let people know what it is so they can give us feedback?
I will have to work with the administrative team, and we'll come up with a plan on getting more vocal. Now, like you said, when I worked at Woodland Hills, I was at West Mifflin, I was very vocal and visible with the social media, and even down at West Mifflin, but I don't have the relationships established with the staff members to just take the picture every time.
hard.
So
It's hard, right.
Yeah, so I don't want anyone to be uncomfortable because some people don't like to be photographed. So we just had to come up with a different way on how to advertise or publicize that information so it could be common to everyone.
All right, so if you can think of a way to do it, let us know, okay?
I will do so.
And the information from the slides, we'll post those on the Gateway website.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Is that all?
That's it.
If you have any
I'm sorry,
questions?
one quick thing.
Yes, sir.
You asked about school board members getting input. Mr. Helms, are you planning on saying anything tonight?
No, I hadn't.
Okay.
I was gonna wait for I was gonna allow for the public comment from agenda items after our 3 guests, because we have 3 guests in the room, so I'd like to get through those
Well,
guests.
he's
and then we
chosen not
can-
to anyway, and the only
Okay.
reason I
Well,
mentioned is
just for anyone else who might want to.
he passed on some information concerning the gap. And as always, it was pretty detailed and thorough, because that's what he does. I don't know, it's probably too granular to go into now, I would suspect, but the point is, for me, that 2 things can be true. You know, we can have made excellent progress and still not gone far enough, obviously. You know, no one would doubt that. So the question ultimately is, how did we improve? You know, what have we learned about that process, and what else is out there to do? And this isn't probably the right forum to go into more detail, but I would like to talk to you, Dr. Woods, a bit more in the near future about kind of more detailed notions, because I've done some studying myself about the gap and discovered that there's some, you know, if you, for example, Google the achievement gap in year-round school, you'll discover that lots of folks are having lots of success because people who are socioeconomically challenged tend to, as you well know, slide in the summer far more than those who are not. So one of the cost-effective ways, in a sense, to fight this is to have school year-round, which lots and lots of states and school districts are going to.
So
and which nobody wants to
you're
do.
suggesting that we go to school year-round?
I think that's what Jack Rovich just said, yes.
I don't think that's the conversation.
All
I
those in
am saying that there is data that very strongly supports the notion that that is an effective way of closing the achievement gap and doing it fairly quickly. I am not suggesting for a moment that it's plausible. The point is, there are lots and lots of tools out there. Not all of them are tools we are going to use. That doesn't mean we're not trying everything that we can.
Right.
So,
Mr. Bova,
yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt, but to piggyback on exactly what you were stating there. The idea and the notion is more time when you go year-round.
no,
And-
actually, sir, it's not. In a lot of these scenarios, it's a similar amount of school days, but instead of the
I
3
hear you
months
saying
off,
breaking it off.
it's broken up so that there are shorter gaps
Yes.
between shorter vacations, and there is less of an opportunity for the progress that's been made to be lost. And again, I didn't create this notion. I've talked to lots of folks about it. Will it happen? Probably not. But again, the point is, there are lots of tools out there. And if you know, you're not a school teacher or have a kid who's in school and don't have to deal with the logistics and problems, it's a pretty neat notion to consider. Not necessarily one that we would ever do here or discuss, of course, without lots of teacher input and all of those things. But if there was not a better, quick solution to this problem, and people truly are concerned about the severity of this problem and the impact it's having on the black community, why wouldn't they say, yeah, let's do it? Hypothetically, of course.
I think Mr. Wallace has never been more happy to be retired after hearing possibility of
You know what?
school.
No, just for what it's worth, a lot of teachers who are in this position have said that it actually makes their life easier to orchestrate because, again, the breaks are spread out through the year. They're extended breaks and they're extended times in school, and it becomes a bit, for a lot of people, less stressful than the whole on-off thing. But point is, I appreciate what you've done. I'd like to know a bit more about the details of it and how we can help you expand on these efforts, because if there's any gap at all, then we haven't gotten where we need to be.
Yeah, if I may, just, from the very beginning with the whole idea of an equity director, an equity consultant, whatever our solution was going to be or our attempt to find a solution, it was never touted as a magic bullet or as that this is going to solve the gap and this is when it's going to happen.
Not at all.
It was always prefaced with, like, we're going to put our best foot forward. We're going to do what we can to attack this problem. And the first big step of that, and I think Dr. Woods would acknowledge it, is acknowledging that the problem exists and then looking into the reasons why it exists and then starting to start trying to find solutions for all those problems. And I think this is, obviously, I'm proud of the district and the strides we've made. It's not nearly good enough for me. I know it's not nearly good enough yet for Dr. Woods or the administration, but it is progress, and it's something that we can build on. And this administration, this board, and the staff of this district is committed to continuing to close this gap, to find the problems that create it, and to eliminate them.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On going to Mr. Bova's point about shorter breaks, do any districts, or is it ever considered a good idea to like bring the kids in for like a week of camp? I know with bright students, they have math camps and things of that nature. And, would it behoove us to consider, say, bringing the kids in for a week in July? Or 1 week in June, and 1 week in July, and 1 week in August?
We do have summer literacy. Also, we do offer up to high school through ELA, science, and algebra remediation. The Keystone is offered one more time during the summer period. So kids do take advantage of that, yes.
Just wondering.
Okay, I would like to move on to our student representative if we can. Ms. Bella Junta, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Woods.